Is your startup really an AI company, or is it just cosplaying as one? Find out next on This Has to Work. Kelly, we are seeing startup after startup after startup talk about being an AI company. And every single time I see it now, the skeptic in me kind of fires off and I go, okay, is this really AI, or are you just trying to capture kind of the buzziness of AI for whatever reason? Am I alone, or is this as rampant as it seems to me?
It's as rampant as it seems from my perspective. And I think there are lots of reasons which we can kind of get into. But I mean, yeah, companies are scrambling to reposition their existing products into AI, whether or not it fits. And I want to be clear, it's not just startups doing this. I think one good example is Notion. Have you used Notion lately?
Oh, yeah.
So AI is weaved into a lot of note taker tools, and Notion already has like a powerful search feature. And I rarely use it's like, why? What are we, maybe I'm not using it correctly, but it just seems like this add-on instead of like a core of the product. Like the product delivers value because of the AI.
Yeah.
So that's what is actually really rare.
So why do you think there is this push? So there could be a couple of reasons, a couple of motivations why a founder would try to talk about their probably SaaS company as an AI company. The first one that comes to mind is for fundraising. They believe it's easier to raise money if you're an AI company with VCs than if you're just a SaaS company. And I think that probably was true at some point, but I'm not so sure that that's the case anymore. And not only that, but actually starting to wonder if it kind of backfires on them a little bit.
Yeah.
Meaning AI deals are expensive, they're frothy. It might actually turn off some mid-tier or some early investors because they're thinking I'll never get a decent valuation. So it does feel like that's kind of the backfire. But also too, do you think there's a portion of this which is just, I want to say AI and I want to talk about how we have this AI capability, or we're an AI company more specifically, just to stay relevant?
I think yes. I think also it's because there is pressure to conform, to adopt AI into your company. So I think yes, in that regard. But I think a lot of companies and founders come to the table not with enough point of view or perspective on how often investors are seeing these conversations and seeing AI mentioned in their products. And because of that, investors have already created their own point of view about what they want to see. If you're going to say that you are AI, one, it does not need to be ChatGPT with a wrapper around it. Two, you need to have a technical co-founder.
Good. Let's get into the definition of it. So I would kind of put this in three categories. So the first category is true AI company, and let's define that.
Okay.
We have AI-enabled companies, so wrappers, enhancements, agents that are doing certain queries or certain functions in the background that are truly AI-engined,
Right.
or AI-powered. And then there's just flat-out SaaS companies just pretending to be AI. So if we took, let's start with the one where it's kind of AI-enabled. How would you define a company that is AI enabled?
Yeah, it's an add-on. The AI is generating content or aggregating content, or it helps the customer navigate the existing UI UX on the platform quicker than they could before. So that's how I would couch it as what enabled would be defined as.
Just wanted to say thanks. We recently hit 100 subscribers, and that's a big deal to me. May not be a big deal in the world of YouTube, but it certainly means a lot to me that you would subscribe to the channel. If you're not subscribed to the channel, help us reach our next goal of 200 subscribers by subscribing today. If you were using a wrapper, what would you say? Is that AI enabled or an AI?
I think that's AI enabled.
Yeah.
If it has a wrapper around it, it's just ChatGPT, and there's probably not that much customization. You probably don't own a lot of the data. That would be a wrapper. Enabled is a wrapper.
And so if we wanted to say, if you're truly an AI company, does that mean that you have to be developing your own model? Does it mean you have to have your own agent? Does it have to mean just data sets? Like, where do we draw that line? And maybe a secondary question is, do we get into the weeds a little bit on trying to make that definition?
Yeah, as someone who is not a machine learning developer expert, how I would define it is by implementing artificial intelligence into your product, it is a core differentiator that helps you solve a problem that could not have been addressed another way. So I think one example is a company called Recursion Pharmaceuticals. And it maps relationships between rare diseases and genes, and it helps you, it's for drug discovery. So it helps you identify rare disease drug candidates in weeks versus years. That's something that couldn't happen before without intelligence.
Is throwing the term AI on everything even a problem, or is it just a curiosity and an interesting talking point to say, people are overusing it or misusing it or whatever the case may be?
Yeah.
If it is a problem, at what point does it really become a problem, something that we have to call out kind of in normal course of business?
I think the semantics of it dilutes funding towards actual innovations. And I think it builds unrealistic customer experiences, because I love going on product hunt and just trying new tools. It is my Achilles heel. And there are lots of things that are intelligent or have intelligence in them. And then I'm more often than not disappointed after I go through the onboarding process because it doesn't deliver actual value. And so I think that's the biggest risk, is by putting AI. People have higher expectations now. To your point in one of our previous conversations, the market expects more now because we're using it more.
So if we assume that most AI companies are really AI-enabled companies, there's only so many people building full-fledged, agent-based models with machine learning and learning cycles and kind of the full-on, vector mathematics and the nerddom of all that makes truly, something truly AI. How important is it for companies to have some sort of AI enablement at this point? Is this like table stakes if you don't have it, and even if you're a SaaS platform?
I don't think it's table stakes. I think there's certain industries where it's just inevitable. Like when we talk about marketing, when we talk about education, I think it's inevitable. But there are industries that still require some level of service or human touch, like healthcare. We could even throw education in there. I think it really depends on how regulated the industry is. But no, I don't think it's dead table stakes. I just think you have to look at your roadmap and really ask yourself, if we inject AI, where and what can it do? What is that big problem that we want our product to solve that it hasn't been able to solve? And can intelligence do that? Now, if you do that exercise and you can't come up with anything, that's a different conversation for you and your team.
Yeah, I would say one of the things to benchmark off of is, where have we wedged AI or AI functionality, enablement, wrapper, whatever you want to call it, into the product unnecessarily? I think of the best example I have is the early Google attempts with search, right? They would summarize the search terms using the AI. Well, part of the problem was it was clearly pulling its own data, and its own data is so heavily saturated by its own algorithm, which creates a layer of distinction on top of it that's not just pure data sets where an AI model or an AI agent would be pulling from kind of a pure data set. It's pulling from an algorithmically driven data set, so it's already kind of polluted.
Right.
And then on top of that, add the advertising aspect to Google, which is you can rank higher based on your advertising relationships. And then it got really weird. And that AI summary was just flat out garbage for, I don't know, the first 3 months they had it. I noticed it lately has gotten a little bit better. But do you have any other examples where you can say, this was just unnecessary? Like, why did you put this in here? It was fine before.
Notion. It was fine before. And now I have this little tab that will summarize the content of my work. And then it's a massive block of text, and it makes the fields bigger. It just creates more friction and problems. I think one tool I was really excited about and using more than Google search for that reason that you mentioned was Perplexity. And it did the integrated search across all the sources and created like essentially a research report. But now we have DeepMind, but now we have ChatGPT Deep Search. So I don't know what that's going to look like.
Yeah,
now.
the Notion thing is interesting because you're basically getting a summary of a summary.
You're getting
a summary of an outline.
Summary of an outline.
That seems pointless.
It is pointless.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ta-da.
So what markets right now are you seeing for founders where AI really is becoming a necessity to at least talk about? So if you don't have a significant portion of your product feature set that is AI based or AI enabled, you at least have to explain why it isn't, because it's now become an expectation. What markets are you seeing that's become the expectation?
Obviously, healthcare. On the diagnostic side, particularly in radiation and x-rays, because that's structured data. That's data that's already labeled and organized. So that's where we're seeing the most growth there. I've been seeing a lot of predictive maintenance in manufacturing. I've sat on some calls there. It's really interesting. So you can just monitor your IoT. It's really interesting, and it predicts when you need to, repower and all these different things. Personalized education, which I'm really excited about. Just using algorithms to kind of do adaptive learning and consider how an individual student learns. I think that's going to be really powerful. And I think another one, because of the climate crisis, is just really precise climate modeling to help local governments anticipate, cost of natural disasters. So I think those are the areas where artificial intelligence makes sense. And there is a crucial payoff if it works.
I also would add financial services is going to be one of those fields where somebody's going to finally figure it out.
Okay.
They wanted...
What's the core thing that needs to be figured out?
Well, they wanted robo-advisors for years. So in other words, again, it's a math problem. Here's your portfolio. Here's your risk tolerance. Those things should match each other. And there is some basic math you can throw on there to say, okay, well, if you're this many years old, you're this many years from retirement, you're probably in your peak earning years, and you have everything in, the highest risk category of, junk bonds or something. I don't know. I'm just making stuff up. But the point is like that robo advisor would say, you need to get into some mutual funds. You need to get into some bonds. You need to get into some lower risk investments, because you're not going to be earning this money forever, and you're going to want to retire at some point in time. And if tomorrow, some silly high risk stock that you have way too much money in bottoms out, you're kind of out of luck. But that it's been a really slow progression there. And that has always been more tech enabled than it's been tech forward. But there's probably a point at which you're going to have an AI agent that is going to not only be actively suggesting and advising you on a level that any certified financial professional or certified financial advisor, so CFP, CFA, which is kind of the highest of the orders that they can have as a financial advisor. I don't know that you're going to be better than the most robust AI model, but then you got the question of hallucinations, and next thing you know, you've put all of your money in, Badu or I don't know, it's just something random. So I think that's one of those fields where somebody's going to figure it out, and everybody else is going to be scrambling to try to catch up. For anybody who's listening to this, it's going, yeah, that's great. I understand that I should probably be very specific about what my AI capabilities are and aren't as a company, but I'm scared. I'm afraid that I'm not going to be able to attract talent. I'm afraid I'm not going to be able to attract investment. It feels like I'm being left behind because I don't have this generative AI agent that's being developed in machine learning and all of this, compute and insert, whatever fear of AI and being left behind. What would you say to them as far as kind of maybe to calm them down a little bit?
Yeah, just block out the investors. Keep the customer at the center. Is there a way to integrate artificial intelligence in your product or service that creates some meaningful return on investment for your customer? Exponentially for your customer. If the answer is no, then the answer is no. If the answer is yes, then explore it. But what you don't want to do is insert it and your product no longer makes sense to your customers who may have been enjoying the product as is.
I would add to that, there is no... if there's no material need no material enhancement to your product by adding some sort of AI component to it, then just don't. And be confident in explaining why you didn't add that to your feature set, because you're confident that it didn't need it, or it wasn't additive, and it might actually been, you know, kind of a discount of value, or a discounted experience if you're the user, because now you have to, using your example for Notion, now I have to like navigate around this stupid thing that I didn't ask for in the first place. So for those, I would say so. And the last thing I would say, and just a piece of advice as we end this episode, is if you're not an AI company, don't say you're an AI company. We don't like to hear it. It eventually comes out. It kind of makes you lose credibility as a founder. And most importantly, to Kelly's advice, it's not necessary. You might be building the world's best product, has nothing to do with AI, or at least just AI enabled. That is fine. It doesn't make it any less valuable of a product. If it fills the needs of a user in a big enough market, you got a great company. So go with it. See you next time. As always, like, comment, and subscribe.